Hey, good morning. It's Charlie Craven from Charlie Slybox. And in continuing with our ongoing streamer series, today I'm going to tie for you, as promised, Kelly Gallup's Zoo Cougar. And I have in my vise right now um, the example that I'm going off. This one was actually tied by Kelly himself. We had him down for our 20th anniversary party last year, and I'm not sure if he left me this fly or if it was just left there, but at any rate, I grabbed it up. He tied this, and I grabbed it up, put it in my little collection. So I've got a pretty good example of what to go by for this fly. This is, as we're talking about sort of, the bugger school of streamers and the muddler school of streamers, this one falls into the muddler school of streamers with the big deer hair head. It's really a pretty simple fly. I've tied a few of them, one, two, three or four of them that I've tied, kind of warming up, trying to get the idea and try to match Kelly's sample. And it's a fairly simple fly, not a ton of materials, pretty easy to pull off. I will say one of the things that I have trouble with, still have trouble with, and Kelly is very good at, is tying these sort of loosely packed deer hair heads. This is an unweighted fly, so you don't necessarily want a tightly packed deer hair head. This is, I don't know if you can get the idea, but it is not terribly tightly packed, and mine almost always come out a little bit more tightly packed than that, whether I try to or not. And I don't know, I guess that's maybe just a style point, but the idea of that loosely packed deer hair head is that fly will saturate and sink more easily, which is a valid point and a good consideration and probably the way it should be done. So I'm going to do my best to approximate that. It makes it a little harder to trim with the razor blade. Got to do a little more work with the scissors, and as you who have been watching, know that the sort of scruffy appearance on flies has sort of enamored me as of late. So I'm going to do my best. Excuse me. I'm going to do my best to try to match that up. So I'm going to take that out of the vise, and I'm going to tie this on. I was looking at my box of hooks the other day. I'm going to tie this on a Gamakastu S11 4L2H, which is a 4X long, 2 extra heavy. That hook's got something on it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it had thread on it from before, but I don't know where that came from. Feel like that's not quite in focus. Let's get that there for you. 4 extra long, 2 extra heavy hook. Something 3X or 4X long will be totally appropriate for this. And I'm going to start with some 110 Denier Magpie material in deep yellow. And I'm going to start this about, let me get some of this stuff out of my background. I'm going to start this about 1/4 of a shank length behind the eye. And I'm going to make a nice, smooth, even thread base all the way back to the bend. And this is a long shank hook, so it's going to take you a minute. But you want to make that initial thread base nice and smooth and solid. All the way back to the bend. Thread hangs just in front of the base of the barb. And then I'm going to spiral wrap forward again and spiral wrap back. And when I dress a hook like that, and I very often will do that on a long shank hook, it'll vary a little bit with what I'm tying over it, but generally speaking, when I dress a hook like that, what I'm trying to do is corrugate the surface so it's got some texture to it. That's going to make the material stick to it a little bit better. Especially, this is a black nickel hook, so it's got a shiny nickel finish on it. That finish makes these hooks a little more slick than your standard bronze finish. So just trying to toughen that up a little bit. So I'm going to pick out, for the tail of this fly, I'm going to pick out 2 yellow Marabou feathers. So I'm going to get one there. I just had 2 volunteers out of this pack that are actually really nice, big, fluffy Marabou feathers. And I'm going to take one to start, and I'll show you what I do here. I'm going to grab it by the butt end, and I'm going to slide everything together and kind of bundle that up into a bunch like so. And I'm going to measure that about a shank length long. And I'm going to take and tie that in at the bend with a band of thread. 5, 6, 8 turns. Just make a little band of thread to tie that in right on top of the hook. Then I'm going to take my second feather, I'm going to do the exact same thing, bundle it up, and measure it into the same length, and tie it in right on top. Bind it down with the same sort of band. So I've got a nice full, thick Marabou tail there. Now what I like to do is just spiral wrap my thread back up to just short of that starting point. And then I'll lay that Marabou down again and anchor it down with another band of thread there. And then I can cut those butt ends off. And you want to be conscious not to get into that front quarter of the hook. You want to leave yourself some working room there, so make sure your butt ends are behind that. Now I can spiral wrap very easily back over the rest of that and cross hatch that a couple of times, just to get that all anchored in good and tight. I want to make sure both my feathers are tied down to the same point, like so. So we're going to use some pearl sparkle braid for the body. And I'm going to take a piece of this, and I'll bring my thread back up to the front. I'm going to tie this down just behind the tie-off, and I'll spiral wrap back over it, all the way back to the bend. You notice my underbody, even on a big, bulkier body like this, is still smooth and level. I don't have any lumps or bumps. I didn't tie this sparkle braid in at the back to make a lump there. I tied it in the full length so that we've got a smooth underbody. Now, anytime I use this sparkle braid, I like to put a little shot of Zap-A-Gap down the hook. Just toughens it up a little bit, keeps things from sliding around. So I'm going to hit that on all sides with, particularly at the back, but on all sides with just a light coat of Zap-A-Gap. Then I'm going to pick up my sparkle braid, and I'm going to start wrapping it. I'm really not overlapping here. I'm just putting one turn in front of the other. This creates a fairly bulky body, but covers a big hook like this pretty quickly. Right up to the end of that tie. If you can see that yellow Marabou is still poking out at the front, I'm going to grab my thread and catch it there on the bottom of the hook. Anchor that down, then I can trim that out. Now I'm going to bring my thread all the way up to the hook eye and back again. I just want to dress the front end of that shank, like so. So pretty simple so far, nothing fancy. Now the underwing on this fly is calf tail hair, which is very reminiscent of a muddler, and finding the right calf tail that's got some long enough hair. This is the tip of the calf tail, and truth be told, my big dog came in and snatched this off my table earlier, so it's got a little slobber on it, but it's all dried out now and it'll work fine. But I'm going to take a pretty good sized clump of this. And one of the tricks on calf tail or any hair, squirrel tail, etc., that's on the tail, on the bone, as you can see, those tips are sort of tapered as they angle up toward the top. I'm going to pull this out like I would hackle fibers, kind of at a right angle, so that those tips become more even. And then I'll cut it off of the tail. So I've got a relatively even bunch. You can see there's a little curve to it, but that's going to work to my advantage here. I'm going to curve that down on the tail. But I do want to clean this out, so I'm going to hold it a little more than halfway up, pull all this underfur or short hairs out, and then I usually run my brush through it just to sort of splay it out. So pretty good sized little clump there. I'm going to go one more cleaner outer. This calf tail that's toward the tip is really glossy and shiny. It's really pretty stuff. So I'm going to measure this to about midpoint on the tail. A couple weird ones here. About midpoint on the tail. Those tips are not stacked or anything. They're just sort of ragged. And I'm going to come in, and this is per Kelly. I'm going to cut these butt ends at an angle. I'll try to do this here where you can see it. And yes, that is me using my scissors left-handed, even though I'm right-handed, but I'm trying to make this so you can see. And the idea of this is when I tie this down, I didn't do a very good job with that angle. Let's try that again. Try it right-handed where I can actually make the scissors work. There we go. When I tie this down, I'm catching all of these butt ends and anchoring that in place. Now what I like to do is, if you just stop here, that wing is pretty upright. I'm going to come right up onto the base of that body and just kind of putting one turn behind the other. You might even need to build a little bit of a ramp here. There we go. To sort of smooth that wing down a bit, like so. Looking pretty good so far. I want to make sure that that base is anchored. Might creep back just a little more. Lay that wing down just a touch more. Yeah, now we're where we want to be. And at this point, I'm going to whip finish. So I'm going to whip finish this thread. Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm a step ahead of myself. Don't, whatever you do, don't whip finish. Now's not the time. What I'm going to do is tie in a mallard flame feather. And in my process on digging out my materials for this fly, I found a bag of mallard flank that I had pre-sorted. It's all nice, big, beautiful feathers. And that feather is an awfully nice one, really well marked and very straight. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this. Again, you know, I've seen these tied a couple different ways. Let's look at Kelly's. Where's his? That's mine. His goes darn near to the end of the tail, so I'm gonna shoot for that. This feather may not quite be long enough. Yeah, it'll work. So I'm going to strip the fluff off the bottom. And this being the first of two feathers, I can actually, this feather's just a little shorter, so I'm going to work with what I've got here. So this is going to fall just short of the end of the tail, but I'm going to lay it flat on top of the fly. So outside up, flat on top of the fly, and kind of cup your fingers around it and anchor it in place. And before you get too many turns on it, make sure it's straight. You can kind of tweak around as need be, so that lays flat on top of the fly. You can see that the end of the tail is just beyond that. That's actually pretty close to what Kelly's got on his here as well. Then I'm going to take another feather, and this one, you know, I got to admit, is not as pretty as the first one, but it's longer. So I'm going to take another feather and measure it, maybe just a touch longer. I could shorten this up a bit. You can see I'm just separating the fibers at the bottom to kind of get the ultimate length here. And then I'll strip from there down. I like to leave that exposed stem. It just makes it easier to adjust the length should I need to. So I'll lay this on top. And same move. I'm going to catch it on top with several turns of thread, a little band here. And make sure it is anchored and flat on top. Looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Now I'm going to come down over these buttons. And when I get up front, these are fairly thick. I'm going to cut these at an angle just so that I get a smooth transition down to bare shank. And smooth that all off with some thread. We're going to spin hair over the top of that, so I want that to be as smooth as I can for the moment. And then I can come in and whip finish this thread and trim that out. Now what I've been doing is putting a little shot of super glue here. We've got a lot of stuff tied down, got a lot of bulk right there, so I'll just coat those thread wraps with some glue. And then I'm going to come in with some, this is 50 Denier Nano Silk in yellow. The color doesn't really matter because it's not going to show. But I'm going to start this right over that wet glue. I bring the thread right up to the base of the wing, trim my tag end out, try to get all of it. And then at this point, I'm just going to wait for a minute. So I'm going to pause and come back because I want that glue to dry before I start to spin my hair. So usually I go get a drink or go play with the dogs for a minute. If you've got a dog, you should go play with him now. He probably misses you. So go play with your dog for a minute. Be back in a couple minutes. It'll feel like an instant. And we'll let this dry. All right, we're back. I told you it was just going to be a second. And it might seem like I maybe got up to get a drink and my big dog jumped on me and put a big dirty footprint in the middle of my white t-shirt. So I have returned wearing a medium blue t-shirt, which I think will give us adequate contrast. I've done a few adjustments on the camera, but I think this will work just fine from here on out. My thread's been hanging there, so I'm going to spin it up just a little bit. I want my thread hanging at the very base of the wing, and this is where we're going to start in with the hair head. What I've got here for the hair head is a piece of grade 1 late season big bug hair from Josh Varner. This stuff is the best hair you can get. It's super straight. It's got good tips. The late season stuff is a little longer than the mid-season stuff, so it's got a little more length, especially down in this corrugated section. So it's got a little more butt end to it. So if you're spinning hair or building a head where you're not using the tips, you've got plenty of length there, but it does have nice tips to make a collar as well. So I'm going to cut a clump off of here. And, you know, it's a pretty good sized clump. Let me get a hold of it here. Pretty good sized clump to start with. And I'm going to thin it down a little bit. But I'll take this clump of hair and I'm going to use a little bone comb to clean the underfur out. I usually hold it over here under my trash can, or over my trash can. And then I'll put it into a large size hair stacker. And once I get it in there, I'll just give it, it just takes a few taps. I'm not trying to kill it. But you can see that comes out pretty darn straight. Got a nice even band of black tips on there. Just a beautiful clump of hair. And this step here is where I'm going to vary from what Kelly does. What Kelly does is he ties this in, this clump for the collar. He ties it in sort of like an ex-caddis wing. Just kind of flares it in place. And for my purposes, I don't know. I've been trying to do it his way. I just can't get it to work. I'm not saying his way doesn't work for him. It does. His came out great. But mine don't come out that way. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But what I'm going to do is he would cut this off here and just leave short, tiny little butts. I'm going to leave a little bit longer butt ends. So I'm going to take the length of my collar and then leave these butt ends longer. And I'm going to lay this hair in about halfway up the wing. I'm going to put one turn over it, 2 turns over it, and then I'll put the 3rd turn over it, and just flare that hair in place. And you can see that collar is just on the top of the hook. The bottom is still bare for the most part at the moment. And then I'll grab. Generally, I don't let go in between to show that, but I'm going to bring the thread forward through these butt ends here. You can see I'm just kind of peeling them back as I go, just kind of creasing that hair up and back so it's out of the way. And that's where I'll start to build the spun part of the head. So I'm going to bring the thread to the front edge of that, and that's where I'm going to start to build the spun part. So I'm going to cut another clump. And again, you know, because you don't want this head packed too tightly. This is an unweighted fly that you're going to fish on a sink tip line or sinking line. But you don't want to contend with the extra buoyancy of a whole bunch of packed hair on there, which is one of those things that is, you know, sort of contrary to my thought process. I always try to pack a lot of hair in just because it looks nice, but form follows function here. We don't want this too tightly packed. So I'm going to take a little bit smaller clump of hair here, and I'm going to lay the middle of it right up against the base of that previous bunch. And I'll put one turn on it, just kind of crease it, another turn over it, and another turn over it. So those 3 turns are right on top of each other, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to tighten this thread. I'm going to hold onto the hook, and I'll just pull tight on the thread toward me. I pulled that bobbin toward me to tighten that. And I'll start to work forward through these butt ends, just stand them up. Pretty constant tension all the way around, but I'm not going to work all the way through. I'm going to kind of slide this all back. You can kind of peel all that hair back. You can see I've got a little room here at the front. And I'm going to put another smaller bunch. Now we got just a little bit of room there, so we don't need a big clump of hair. So a slightly smaller bunch, cut it, clean it, cut the tips off. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to place the center of that bunch against the base of the previous bunch. 1, crease the hair, 2, 3, and then I'm going to tighten it to spin it. And just kind of push all that back. I'm not really packing that in. I'm not trying to make a super dense hair head here. I do find if the head is real loose, you're kind of stuck trimming it with scissors because it just won't stand up to a razor blade. And the razor blade does a much cleaner job of trimming the head anyway. So I try to find a happy medium there. You know, not too densely packed, but dense enough that I can use the blade to trim it. And then typically on these hair bugs, I'll use a hand whip finish because I can direct where those wraps go a little better. And I'll trim that thread out. All right, so now we're going to get to the fun part. This is the trimming part. And I'm going to check and make sure everything's still square on the hook. Sometimes you'll twist stuff, although I glued that and let it dry while I was changing my shirt, so it's pretty solid now. And I'm going to take half a double-edged razor blade here. And I'm going to start by just making a flat cut across the bottom of the fly. You can see I just kind of make a sweep across the bottom. Just trying to flatten that out a bit. And I'll try to keep this where you guys can see it as well, but you know, truth be told, I got to see it because I'm working with a double-edged blade and I don't want to cut my fingers off. So now I'm going to turn the fly over and I'm going to bend the blade, and I'm going to start with it. It's not super bent. I'm going to open the bend up a little bit. And I'm going to push back in to the head, and you can kind of rock the blade back and forth a bit. And you can see how this more loosely packed hair doesn't want to stand up to that blade, so I'm going to have to kind of saw into this a bit. And what I'm shooting for here is a wide, flat head. And this is one of the things, you know, I get asked a lot, like how do you trim this shape or that shape? It depends on how much hair you've got on the hook to start with. It depends on the texture of the hair. You know, every piece of hair is not the same. Some pieces are finer hair, some pieces are coarser hair. Some hold up to the blade a little better than others. This is fairly coarse hair. I did notice that this clump that I'm working with is a little bit coarser than what Kelly had on his fly. So you can kind of see the general shape I'm getting here. And again, I promised I'd try to do this all up here where you could see it. You know, these initial cuts, you're just trying to get the butt ends off and get kind of a wide tapered shape. We're getting there pretty good. Like so. And truth be told, you know, as ragged as that looks, you could take that out and fish it and it would work just fine. But we're going to clean it up a bit. I'll put him back in my vise here. I typically hold the fly in my hand when I do this trimming because I am right-handed. I do tie left-handed, but I am right-handed. So it's just more natural for me to have the fly facing the other way. Now as I kind of look around this fly, I've got a few ragged hairs. Not a big deal. I'm going to pinch these down, come in with my scissors, and I kind of use just the radius of my thumb. Got anything extra long, you can come in and trim those out. Excuse me, I'll tell you, for me, this is so much easier done in hand than it is in the vise. I just have the wrong angle there. Pretty good, pretty good. And like I say, one of the big things on hair heads and hair flies is knowing when to call it good. You know, if you're not tying a display bug, which I'm not really here, although in some form or another, I guess I am, because you guys are all looking at this. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It certainly doesn't have to be perfect to fish. But that goes against my grain, so I'm going to make it as close to perfect as I can. And I'm getting pretty close there. Clean this collar up a little bit down here. You can see nice and flat on the bottom. You can also see, turn that just right for you. Right in here you can see that little yellow nub where we tied the wings down. That's sort of a nice block for the head as well. And I'm going to call that pretty darn good. You can see that square face. Where's Kel's? Here's Kelly's fly. There's mine. His color's a little different. I could knock the, let's see, can we go this way? Knock the front edge of that down a little bit. I could take that down one size, but I'm not gonna. That's the Charlie Craven version of Kelly Gallup fly. So that is the Zoo Cougar. You know, a cool fly from the 90s. You know, as we're talking about kind of the historical progression of streamers and when flies started to vary off of you know, a pretty narrow template between, you know, either a bugger or a muddler. This is obviously from the muddler school of fly tying design with the deer hair head, but not with the bugger body. You know, pretty unique body, you know, body and wing style, which Kelly is very good at, kind of developing some of that you know, he's the guy that in 30, 40 years, everybody's going to be talking about when Kelly did this, and where streamer design has gone since then. But that is a Zoo Cougar, and a good exercise, good practice in employing a few different techniques on sort of a combination fly, and what you can do by doing that. This fly's got a really erratic action in the water. It between that big hair head that is loosely packed, which I think is key to it. That builds the action into the fly, and that wing definitely. So you should tie some of these up. You should, if you haven't already, you should have already. I don't know where you've been, what you've been doing, but you should have some Zoo Cougars. Sink tip line, short leader. Swim this fly, swim it slow. I've had actually back in the day, I had some pretty good days with this fly. I haven't fished it in a long time because, you know, I don't know. I don't know why, but now I've got 6 of them sitting on my desk, so I'll fish them some more. But that's it. That's a Zoo Cougar. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm Charlie Craven, and if you need anything, charliesflybox.com. You guys take care.